of that treatment. That was back then. But he died before he had the chance to prove it. But now they're going and using some of his notes. Now this happened back in the 50s, I think. And the doctors now are using some of his notes, the research group, the radical group. And x-rays and lab reports and all kinds of proof that his procedures really cured cancer. But before the 5 years was up, he died. In other words, they needed 5 years of that treatment. That was back then. But he died before he had the chance to prove it. But now they're going and using some of his notes. Now this happened back in the 50s, I think. And the doctors now are using some of his notes, the research groups, the radical groups and so on, are using some of his methods and his treatment. But I think, in a sense, they can research that as far as practicing medicine and using unorthodox ways, they can't belong to the AMA. But I think what you're saying is people don't need to belong to something. Doctors need to be, and dentists both, need to be under tighter control because they have the freedom to do whatever their little hearts desire in their private office as long as it doesn't kill anybody. And sometimes they even kill somebody, but it isn't, unless it happens to be actually with murder in mind, do they prosecute them. Unless it happens to be quite a few deaths, and then they start questioning it, that. The medical profession does need to be improved upon.
They're taught to have an awful lot of respect for their judgment. But just because they've had those years of schooling, that their judgment is very, very respectable. And there are a lot of doctors who could go to school for 3 times that many years and still have developed no judgment. And do extremely dangerous things. So, like he says, there really needs to be some way of keeping better checks on them, having better check partners. Like every doctor ought to have at least 2 or 3 check partners.
Well, they ought to have some rules and a closer check on them. That's what I think.
Well, one thing you mentioned on the previous tape was that you felt it wasn't right for more civilized countries to impose their civilized ways on less civilized things, countries or civilizations, because in the process they sometimes destroyed some good things. And I was thinking how this, I guess it would apply or could apply to Houston in the sense of no matter how right someone thought they were, or even how right they thought the ways of Houston were, it wouldn't be right to go to Dallas or even someone else and impose those things on them or feel that they have the right to do that. Would that be right?
Well, in a sense, nobody in Houston would have that characteristic of trying to improve upon somebody in Houston. And the ones in Dallas are sunk anyway. But the...
Are you saying that there's a trend among them to want to go out missionary, and the ones who are good to go missionary and impose their ways on others? That's true. We saw on the news tonight a little missionary who went to Central America and brought back some little girls who had eye damage, brought them to Dallas first.
For nutrition.
Yes, due to malnutrition. And brought them to Dallas for testing and maybe surgery and so forth. Now that kind of missionary work is good, because that was trying to subject them to medical improvement that they might not have been able to be subjected to otherwise, but how much those same missionaries went in and imposed their ideas of religion and so forth on them, we don't know. But as we saw that little verb on the news, we thought this kind of missionary work we could use a lot more of.
And Baylor Medical College was dropping the bill, so it's all, they were working together.
They were picking up the tab. Baylor Medical.
Right?
One of the things I wondered is the reason why so many of these truths get started and are able to continue, because there seems to be a mass of people out there that complain and keep complaining,
Right.
don't ever do anything about it. They don't seem to, all they seem to have in their programming is, oh, I don't like this. But they can't seem to get beyond that and say, well, what could I do? What could I do to change it? And there's got to be some way that, like, back in the 30s, I think Mike was brought up before, during the Depression, when everything was so hard, the individuals had to help each other, and each one had to look out for not only themselves but everyone else, because the circumstances necessitated it. And I could be wrong, but I thought that there seemed to also be more of a concern about what I leave for my children. It's like they were aware of the genes and how that worked, even more so than they seem to be now, at least on a conscious level. And it doesn't make any sense. Like I wonder if there's some way of letting them bring back more to the surface, like when the marriages started breaking up, people started getting divorces, and the family started fragmenting. It seemed like they lost a lot of what they had before. And I wondered that there's a positive and negative to what's happening here, but is there some way that they can get back onto the track?
They don't need to get back. They need to go to a new track that's on track.
That's what I mean.
And, but see, as you think about those things, and as you talk about them here, and as others hear about it, as you mentioned that people have a tendency to complain and do nothing about it, and then you think the next thought that you have is what they need to do is do something about it, and then the next thought that you have is even if it's go decide what organization I'm going to join that seems to try to make a statement in correction of this thing that I'm complaining about. You see, even if it's a political organization or if it's a civic organization or if there isn't any, maybe I can start something within the circle of people that I associate with that would be a conscious effort to try to change these things. Now, believe it or not, the dislike of it does something about it. It does a minor thing about it, but it does something about it. You put that thought out, and that individual you're talking about, who's fault-finding, if he's fault-finding with something that needs correction, if it's really something that needs correction, he's doing a favor, in a sense, by not liking it. Now, it's true that you can say, well, then why don't you do something about it? He, believe it or not, is doing something about it by putting that thought out that he doesn't like it, and he wishes that it could be corrected. But he can do more at that point. And then you're putting out the thought, you can do more than just say, I don't like it. And then you're putting another thought out. One thing you could do is search out what constructive move can I make to contribute toward the change of this element that I'm criticizing. And if he's sensitive and picks up on that thought, he'll decide to do something about it. He'll send an article into the newspaper, or he'll speak to several people about it, talk his preacher into bringing it up in the pulpit on Sunday, or something to make a statement to try to change whatever it is he's finding fault in.
At first, he ought to stop complaining, because that's a very contagious thing. Complaining and griping are two things that can really cause a lot of trouble, because let's say that he complains about President Reagan, It doesn't do a bit of good to complain about President Reagan. But when the only time you can complain is when you go and vote for the next president. And I can guarantee that you will find fault with the next president if he's going to continue to complain.
Right, now that kind of complaining is worthless.
But
If he's complaining about people who are refusing to come to grips with their smoking problem or their this or that, that kind of complaint is putting positive thoughts into the air. But if he's complaining about things like he's talking about, it's just bouncing off negativity. It's just
let's remember now, let's zero in on more of the things that we don't want. Characteristics that we don't want in the people in Houston to have, okay? In other words, we know that things in the world aren't right, but they're going to be made right, okay? This is the attitude we're going to take. But what we want to do is leave out the baddies, the bad characteristics that humans have out of Houston.
our foodies.
Okay, Arthur, you got a good one?
I hope so. When you talked about, I guess it was gossip in general, today, and just when she brought that up, an experience happened to me that I didn't realize would happen until just a little while ago. A new person started working that worked at another store, and I talked to this person on the phone today, and he said, "How's so-and-so doing? How you like working with so-and-so?" And a couple other people had talked to me about this, and I had not really given it too much thought. I could tell the personality was a little bit high-strung and would want things quickly, but I considered that okay because she wanted to do a good job. But this one person said, "Well, how do you like so-and-so?" and really started digging in like it was the gossip was going in it, and it was subconsciously changing my perception and attitude of the person. And I didn't realize that, and then now I realize what's going on. Then I started looking at the person differently, and it was, if the humans could stop trying to paint pictures of their opinion of somebody, it would help that person not be the way they are, or maybe some of it's true. But they create with their thoughts and keep that person in a certain circumstance that they can't break out of. And through their gossip and telling everybody what they think of this person,
They make them into that person even if they weren't.
And then that person will go back and do it to them, and they're in this continual loop that keeps everybody in a
Give them
position
the
of
opportunity.
and that's got to stop. That's got to break someplace.
That go one step back from that, because it's almost as if most people have to be looking for someone constantly to get rid of. I mean, they have to not get rid of, but yes, to get rid of. It's like in an organization or something, they've got to have somebody there that doesn't really belong.
So they can put off all the. Well, that happened again. With
It also makes them look better if they can point the faults out of so-and-so over here. And so-and-so might be a really good person and really doing better performance than these others. But that person might be making waves, and these others don't want waves. It's like, I like my 3-martini lunch. I like to do my work at my pace. And if you work too fast, then something's wrong with you. You see, when you're being too conscious, what do you want, the presidency of the corporation? What do you after, my job? You see, when the person's really probably not after their job at all, just really wants to do the best job they can do. But this attitude can ruin that. This happens all the time. And that poor person then thinks, what went wrong? I was the most conscientious person at that desk, but if the truth were known, they would say, that was the trouble. You were too conscientious, but they're not brave enough to say that.
I think that could be in the category of jealousy. Jealous of another person. And that's one characteristic that doesn't need to go to Mr. Wilson.
Well, that might be, but this was more like, this person, I guess, may have talked in dirty language or came across dirty or I don't know what kind of terminology you want to put on it. But when this person says something to me that implies these kind of things, you know, my brain automatically starts, if I don't watch it, starts turning these things out and put the label on this person, and my subconscious or conscious thoughts, my vehicle thoughts, will make that person think those things that way continually.
You adopt their view. Now, you all should be beyond that. I mean, as members of our class, you should be sharp enough to catch that and not be a victim of his brainwashing you.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? Now, how about the person he was talking about? Forget what they've said about that person, and you tell us honestly what you think. I would like to know about the person that they're talking about. What do you think that person's performance is?
She's aggressive salesman that wants to make a buck, but she does it professionally, I guess as professional as they can do it, and she wants to have her situation, she wants to know where her product is. And
well, what is it that she's doing that is making them start the little gossip against her?
I
bet you could figure it out.
Well, she'll.
Is
I guess
conscientious there?
Well, I guess she plays a little game with. Well, she'll have a system that she wants configured and go out the door, and so that she can have it, to make sure she'll have it, she'll tell you to do it 2 or 3 days before it really needs to happen when you have to do other things.
Okay, thank you.
That's planning her strategy.
Well, it's planning her strategy, but she doesn't have to play that game with me, but she doesn't know that. But she has to play that with other people that aren't as conscientious because she wants to cover her bets.
Well, you know why that happens? Because the people she's working with are irresponsible.
Right.
Yeah,
So then it turns
and also
around.
it still is, I can see a lot of jealousy. And I still see what he said, there's a lot of truth there, because she is planning her strategy, and it's getting in their way because they don't plan their strategy.
Right.
You know,
All the time.
right.
Well, you're jealous. Anna?
Well, one thing from both being a waitress and being a supply planner, I know Lynn talked about this before, just the attitude of individuals in a service position where a lot of times they feel like they're doing you a favor when you come in to buy their goods, or their attitude they are not restrained in their
That's
conduct.
appreciative.
They're pretty rude, or say what they want, or make you feel like.
All right. Let's take restaurants, for example, and see if this is what you're talking about. T and I have gone into some places where their attitude was that we should be extremely honored to eat in their place, and that we should accept whatever it was they had to dish out, no matter how bad it was, because they were convinced that it was exactly what they wanted, and they were blinded to the fact that it might be an ice cold potato, or it might, that things weren't up to snuff at all. And they had even trained all their employees to have this nose up in the air attitude that they can do no wrong. And it has turned upside down. Instead of the place being one who serves people who come in and tries to give them what they want that person to buy what it is that they want to dish out, no matter whether it's what they want or not. In other words, the restaurant is the authority on what you should like, instead of your being the authority upon it.
That's poor attitude.
Okay.
That's one thing that needs to be put in there, because people with poor attitudes, self-centeredness, these are the things we're looking for, okay? Because there are a lot of things that we still have to bring to the surface, and through your little expressions that you give to us, then we get a simplified term that we can put down, that people don't need a characteristic, getting all things done. In other words, we can zero in on a word like jealousy, self-centeredness, rudeness, a poor attitude, and so on. Okay? Now see there?
One characteristic I think run into in my past is people having such strong likes and dislikes where they can't work with so many different individuals. Even in my past now, a certain tech can't work with this doctor, or even two doctors, you don't want to ever have their schedule be at the same time. And some nurses don't want to work with this tech, and all this conflict that really interferes with the task and the forward motion. And I don't know if it's intolerance or what.
Difficulty in getting along with each other. There has to be a reason, right?
With people, but it's so common.
Well, there are two ways to look at that. It's wrong. That's one way. And it is, it's true that it's wrong, that they shouldn't have to do that. But we've, like in our class, we've had where a certain person can't do a task with another person because there's conflict involved and we don't want it interfering with the task. In a sense, though it shouldn't exist, if they can perform their function better without that conflict, they're wiser than if they're so preoccupied with the squabbling that's going on between them that they take out the wrong organ. No, I'm not kidding. I'm not kidding because
a lot of times it's, they don't like the way the doctor treats them. In other words, they're too sensitive. And they, instead of keeping their minds on their task, they're too involved in so-and-so. When he asks for a hemostat, he says it in a way that hits them the wrong way, and therefore I don't want to scrub for him.
So petty.
In pettiness and sensitiveness. I mean, these things are coming out, okay? These are the things that you can't have in the next level. I mean, they're used to pick up.
Just it might be kind of across the board, kind of taking a lot of different things people have been saying. It's kind of like people don't want to be exploited. There's the individual who exploits, and then there's also the individual who's kind of dumb enough to be exploited by that individual. And I'm just kind of trying to think, well, there's probably a way that the individual who's exploited could learn how to stop constantly being in that position. And I'm thinking of how, like certain companies, like a steel company, all of a sudden it comes to the point where the ones running it can no longer run it at the profits that they want it to run, so that the workers finally got smart enough and then had bought it and found out that they could run that company, and they ended up sharing the profits. There was some of these airlines or something that do that type of thing, where the company is owned partially by the employees as well, and it's like no one really gets super rich. Somehow the wealth is kind of all around. It's not in one place, and so there's not the same attitude where they don't really care. They just
Well, that's where their goal is on making money. In other words, businesses that it has to be designed in Houston where the money is more evenly distributed, and that it isn't something that a handful of people
Greed.
greed. Greed's the word there. because there are more millionaires now in the world, or in the United States, than there ever has been. Where did we hear that? We heard that. And a lot of
it's
them,
nothing to be a millionaire anymore.
you have
Millionaires
to be
are
a
so common.
millionaire. But even still, people are still greedy. Greed is,
A person wouldn't exploit another person if they weren't greedy. I mean, it had to be greed that motivated that exploitation or something.
let's get some who haven't, we haven't asked.
Jody, Mary,
Oh,
you ready?
well, he has something else.
What I've been seeing a lot lately, especially when I aircraft task, is lack of restraint in a lot of different areas. Kind of a broad subject, but people bring back, a few examples, they bring back virtually every day some kind of sweets or food or something, and people automatically kind of migrate there and just take it without even thinking, or they're saying, well, I shouldn't really have this, but they just get into it. And see a lot of lack of restraint in the way people drive at times, especially certain hours of the day, or in their emotions. Some individuals get angry over the least little thing. It's just different degrees, and I see Houstonians as needing to be able to exercise a large degree of restraint in a broad number of areas.
You know, a lot of people have never experienced restraint. They just go with whatever the vehicle desire is at the moment. They don't even know what the task is of saying no to whatever it is that they need to learn that restraint. And of course, that's a trend that happened some years ago. That if you like it, do it. You know, don't have any restraint. That was a very, very strong trend, and they hopefully will learn a lot of lessons from all the mess they've gotten themselves into because of lack of restraint. But restraint is certainly good. Something a Houstonian would have to have some experience in, and regular practice.
And that, in a sense, that lack of independence. In other words, they're afraid to not go along with it because they're afraid that they will appear to be
Goody-goody.
or something. In other words, they would rather say, oh, I know I shouldn't be doing this, but starting tomorrow, I'll go back on my diet or something. And of course, tomorrow never comes, but it's in a sense, it's being weak and not very independent. It's always a good feeling to not be like everybody else. You know what I mean? In other words, this vehicle always felt good about not having to go along with everybody because it didn't need to. You know what I mean? In other words, if somebody wanted to go out and get drunk or smoke cigarettes or drink coffee or things like that, just because this vehicle didn't like it, it never felt compelled to do it because everybody else was doing it. You know what I'm saying? But if the vehicle felt like it wanted to drink a cup of coffee or wanted to smoke a cigarette or go out and get drunk, it would do it. But it wouldn't do it because everybody else was doing it. You see what I'm saying? So in a sense, it's a form of independence and knowing that you don't have to do things that others.
That when you get drunk, you're going to do it because you want to get drunk, not because everybody else is going to.
So it's I guess that's, I don't know if that's independence or what's the word for it?
No, I think you're right. I think it is independence because it means that I'm not dictated by what you all are doing, or I'm not dictated by what you think I should be doing at this time, but I'm going to choose to do what I do according to when I want to do it. Now, that's a good characteristic. That doesn't mean they're going to choose all good things to do, but it's still a good characteristic to have, to not just be swayed by the stream, by whatever the stream is doing. And so that kind of independence, believe it or not, there's not a member of the next level who lives by next level ways in order to be a part of the stream. Everyone do it, every single member of the next level does it entirely in an independent way. As an individual, they have gained all those characteristics. And they can't even do them on the basis of others doing them, any more than you can, right? You can't even correct the things that you have to correct on the basis of others are correcting them. You have to fight through them yourself and gain control in those areas. So independence is a good thing. You know, I've got to mention moderation. Nobody's brought it up, but a lot of things that humans do wouldn't be so wrong if they did them with a little bit more moderation, and that's part of the strength of what Dorothy brought up. But it wouldn't hurt them to have some sweets if they didn't just gobble up so many sweets. It wouldn't hurt them if they went to the ball game to have a beer. It doesn't do them any harm, but they don't know how to go have a beer. They only know how to have a case of beer. You know, I mean that's true. And they can't realize that they could enjoy having a beer. They can't recognize that they could enjoy having a beer, or that they could have a small piece of cake. They want a fourth of that cake because it's cake time, you know. Or they want
a bag of cookies.
They want to just gorge on whatever it is that they want at the moment. They haven't yet learned that the satisfaction that they could find satisfaction even from a moderation in that indulgence.
That's a good one.
And
That covers lots of things.
yeah.
Who's going to get out of it?
Oh, that's it. Allison, okay.
I'm not sure if it's how to apply it, you covered it, but something you talked about before is the susceptibility that humans have to accepting or being brainwashed by what is being presented as how something is. In other words, like the way advertisements, magazines, and television present the world. And I know, like today was just kind of a reminder. Like I'll sit in the craft and watch TV and read the magazines, and then go out in the world, and it's like humans don't live at the vocabulary that they're speaking. In other words, them organized doesn't mean what the word seems to really mean. And they say, well, buy these computers and get all organized. And they present, these advertisements.
They get organized enough to buy the computer.
They show these big computers, and they do all these things. And you get down to it, you go down to the computer store, you open the storeroom, and it's the biggest mess you've ever seen.
You get confused, then. There's confusion to your organization.
They're not organized at all. And it's like by buying that computer, I'm now part of being organized, and I'm moving up.
No, that's true. That's a good point, because their organization is very superficial. You wouldn't believe how many people would clean their living room, because that's the room that other people would come into, and the rest of their house is a pile of junk.
They push all the dirt back in the back room.
Now, I mean that literally. That you wouldn't believe the numbers of humans that their whole life is just that way. They only let you see the one little thing about them that presents itself fairly well. Whether it's their living room or or an aspect of their business or their career, the one little facet that is as presentable as their living room, they will expose. But they don't really care to exert the effort to make the rest of it match, even though they admire the fact they've got that living room fixed up. You know, and they keep saying, now tomorrow I'm going to get to the dining room.
You noticed the other day, last weekend, we were working on the car, and you look at the M car, and say, well, this is a really nice, pretty nice car on the outside, but you get on the inside, or any other car, the cars all look nice on the outside, but you get into the engine, and they've got, it's like whoever designed that was like, where was their mind when they did it? I mean, why did they run the hoses all over this way when they could have just done it this way? And it just doesn't make sense.
Well, but that's the complexity of what the society has come to be. When you've got committees and organizations and labor unions saying that you've got to do this, and you've got these pollution control things, and you've got to put all these devices on there, and you've got these companies that want to make a lot of money out selling you things to put on your vehicle that you don't need, and then everybody compromises. It's true that it's a wonder that it runs. I mean, even runs. And the more complicated they get, sometimes they don't run. I mean, they run the least. The Model Ts were probably more reliable on the road than the ones that are so sophisticated. But believe it or not, there is a trend now to simplify the complications in automobiles and airplanes. There's a strong, they realize that recently the military created some jets that were the most advanced jets. I don't know if y'all ever saw this on 60 Minutes or someplace, but they couldn't find any pilots who could academically comprehend the capabilities of the jets that they were flying. They could learn one or two or three aspects of it, but they couldn't ever take advantage of it because it was too complicated to learn how to take advantage of it. Now, that's the same thing as computers. People who buy computers, they learn one or two little things, neat little tricks, so they can say they've got a computer and they do this with it. And there are thousands of things they could do with it if they knew how to apply them to it. But they feel like they've conquered it if they can turn it on and they can get one little, do the grocery list or pay a bill or something. They've at least got, in their mind, they've got the computer figured out. They're masters of the computer. But there is an effort underway to simplify things because they realize some of their mechanisms have gone beyond the capacity. In other words, so many complicated brains went into creating that jet that they didn't realize that one person's going to get in there, and that one person doesn't have the ability to do all the things that it took to take advantage of the capabilities of that jet. Do you understand that? And that's not only in that jet plane, that's that way in lots of things. They have become so complex. And they are trying now to reduce the number of wires, reduce the things so that you can do a few things well instead of so many that you're totally confused.
Well, I think one of the things that need to be in Houston or don't need to be in Houston, and that's different kinds of automobiles. In other words, they only need one kind of automobile. And they don't need different models of, that. What difference does it make as long as it gets you where you're going and it's comfortable? And plus the fact they don't need different models of trains, they don't need different kinds of butter, they don't need different kinds of milk, dairy milk. They all come from a cow. And in other words, things, there's the dollar sign, which this is what this nation, free enterprise, isn't that what they call it?
Right.
The,
capitalism, free enterprise.
This is what this country is based on, but you have to eventually overcome that. In other words, the new monetary system has to come out to method of people existing, because when you go to Houston, you don't want poverty, right? You want people to all the, now this might sound like, what is it?
Socialism.
Socialism. But, even in Russia, they don't even have this, because, they still have different, people do not live equally in Russia. And we're talking about in Houston, people living equally. But it doesn't mean that everyone has the same thing as the Joneses next door. You still would have to earn it according to your ability. You see what we're saying?
But you have the potential to do it.
Like
No,
if you get, let's say every time you do a job, you get a wooden nickel. And after you get so many wooden nickels, you can go get yourself a television set. After you get so many nickels, you get yourself an automobile. And it's still the effort behind that you're concerned about.
Either that way, or you have to issue televisions to everybody, and if they don't bring home so many wooden nickels in performance, then you have to start taking the televisions away. Because something has to make humans be productive. They have to be, they have to know the value of being productive. But not to be productive in the way they are, which is competition, fighting each other. If I can come up with a way to kill your firm so that mine will go up. There wasn't anything wrong with monopolies, really. There was nothing wrong with monopolies. In essence, it's what monopolies tried to do that needed to be controlled. But it didn't mean that monopolies, that it was right to do away with the idea of monopolies. In other words, let's say that a company has a monopoly on something. We'll take the telephone company, for example. They've forced it to break up into lots of places. Don't you think for 1 minute that one of those companies isn't going to get their money back in another way? Now, they're already doing it. People out in some of these little suburbs out here, the telephone bills have tripled since the telephone company has broken up into different companies. In other words, you didn't cure any ills by breaking up the monopolies, because even the company that was head of the monopoly is going to make their money another way. They're going to see to it that they make it. Even if on paper it appears that there is no longer a monopoly, that there might be many companies. But now you've got many people are going to make their money because they were forced to break up the monopoly. So who's the loser? The poor consumer ends up being the loser in a circumstance like that. I'm talking about when T said a moment ago that there'll be one car company in Houston. Do you see what we're saying?
Or one kind of car.
Or one kind of car.
You don't need 100 different kinds of
No.
automobiles.
It was wrong to think that you must force a competitor. Do you follow what we're saying? It's wrong to force a competitor. It's like if a young person comes up and he wants to be an auto designer, he can go to work for the place that in the department that designs that car. And if he proves to be good enough, they'll start buying his designs. If they truly have value over the designs, they'd be stupid not to accept his design. But now it's not end result that's accepted. It's just something that's different. Do you see what we're saying? Because by being something different, we can compete with it. Do you understand what we're saying? No? Understand?
Sure. And I think just...
Well, this goes along with the value of being productive. It seems like people need to learn how to do a task without losing sight of the reason they're doing the task.
That applies to you all too, doesn't it?
Yes. How to not waste time. How to not go to the other extreme of burning yourself out on the task. How to keep the proper overview while you're doing the task. Find your strategy before. I don't know if that would be a prerequisite or something you would have to learn after getting there.
That's good.
Of call it quits. Okay.
See that time for everybody to start going down through. Okay, I think we've got a lot of good, characteristics that, but, I'm sure y'all still have some, so don't stop thinking about it.
This is the last time I'll talk to you about them. I said this isn't